My name is Tale of the Toaster, making another guest appearance, this time for the King Buxton podcast.
We are here at the Robot Wars History podcast. We sometimes have scheduling problems, and this time the person with scheduling problems was Luke. So we're just going to try and do an episode without him and I hope it's not completely shit.
It probably will be, but we're hoping it won't be.
Then it'll only be like on par with the Roadblock episode, so hey.
Yeah, and you can't get much worse than our worst, so... You know, we haven't got standards to live up to here.
No, not at all. So King Buxton, certainly a robot. Like,
Come on.
It's
the king of all Buxtons, man.
The thing is, it's one of those machines that like it's a very good machine. It's good at what it does, but in terms of being very interesting to talk about,
That's the end of your sentence. It's a very good robot at what it does. So looking at its design further,
well, it's a square with some wheels on it, and yeah,
come on.
yeah, it's primarily armed with lifting spikes, and then they keep sticking other things on the back of it that never quite work right. Like a saw blade. It had a saw blade in Series 5. What are you doing?
The best rear weapon that King B ever had was an HDPE bumper plate, which didn't even protect it from Big Nipper, but that's one for later.
To be kinder to the thing, it had a very long career from Series 2 all the way through to 8. It's still competing on the live circuit.
And there's a new one in the works, looking at a prospective Series 11 as well.
To be fair to it, it certainly performed better than some of the other returning veterans in Series 8. The only ones that really did better than it that were absolutely returning veteran machines were Dansom Kia, which was technically a new build, and Storm 2. And I would still give King B the prize over Storm 2 because at least King B will work for an entire flight without, needing to be packed with ice.
If you want to make that argument against Storm 2, which has been like quite popular lately, I don't think King B's the best robot to place it against in that regard. Do you?
Well, it depends. Is the fight? Is ice allowed as a feature of your robot in this fantasy battle?
No, because fire is for King B. and snap drive chains.
Imagine it's just the sonic boom, fire and ice trailer. What happens when you mix Storm 2 and King B? You get room temperature.
Sonic room temperature, get it now.
Oh god, it would probably still be a better game than Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Oh god, I've played that shit. I bought that shit knowing what I was going into. King Buxton first appeared in Series 2, and it was under the weight limit at 78 kilograms. Measured 0.9 by 0.85 by 0.27. Had a speed of 80 miles per hour and a turning circle of 0. Ground clearance of 50 millimeters, so, quite large. It was powered by two 12-volt batteries that were definitely not flammable, and its weapons were movable titanium spikes. Under note, it was listed as having a 3mm aluminium shell, which must be a very strange brand of see-through aluminium, and it was four-wheel drive, which is, I think that's pretty standard for robots with four wheels, but what do I know? The team were Simon Harrison, Steve Monk, and Phil Brett. And while it was suggested that we invite Simon Harrison to this podcast, that would have been the most awkward thing ever, so we didn't.
Yeah, Simon Harrison is like the nicest guy ever, and I would feel bad for even saying like King B went over the flame pit. I'd just feel like I'd be insulting the entirety of Portsmouth.
He just has like PTSD flashbacks of King B catching fire.
We're kind of dicks about most of the robots on this show, even the good ones.
So if you're gonna go out of your way to say that King Buxton was underweight at 78 kilograms, what could they have done with that 2 kilograms left over then?
Reliability.
I'm not sure reliability has a weight. It's generally more of an abstract concept, mate.
So you just walk into the shop opposite the King of Bots studio. Hello, can I buy 2 kilograms worth of reliability?
Oh god.
Fuck's sake.
obviously it's Series 2, so we've got the Gauntlet. It's shit, but you know. Oh god, the Gauntlet.
It did quite well at it as it goes.
I think Dan was
The
criticising
Gauntlet itself was shit. But
The Gauntlet in its run against the Gauntlet got 2 meters.
it was then pushed back by the Sentinel, and that was kind of the end.
You just enter the Series 7 horizontal spinner Mayhem into a Mayhem. Would it win?
That depends who it's up against. I mean, if you put it in with some good robots, maybe, but if you put it in with Napalm would still somehow go through.
Very good.
So it started the Gauntlet. It has very obvious control issues at the beginning of its run. It struggles to get past the obstacles and actually struggles to drive in a straight line. It manages to speed past Matilda, but then it gets grabbed by Killalot and pins it to the fence, and just holds it there until time runs out, because house robots in the Gauntlet is what they did, especially in Series 2. But it still managed a respectable distance of 10.6 meters, which was overall third, I believe.
Yeah, like we've seen much worse distances than 10.6 come in third.
Yeah, we've seen much distances go than that actually kind of win the thing. But, the trials, because I really don't know what to make of the trials, because they were different in every episode. So you could end up with a robot that was really good for one specific trial, but would be completely shit at the one it actually got. And King B got the joust, which I'm not even.
Which was the most generic joust you could ever have. It went straight into Matilda and got knocked off after a little bit of a tussle.
Yeah, well, you can barely see it because there's a bunch of smoke and Matilda's ridiculous spark thrower for no reason.
What was that sparkler all about?
It was like a pre-runner to Series 10's Fog of War.
I think it was, because I think it prepared JP to lose his shit whenever it happened. So I remember him saying, like, Matilda's on fire, and then for when Fog of War happens, well, we know how he reacts, so...
The Sparklers of War!
Jonathan tries so hard to sell the Fog of War. He tries so hard, and it's not working.
It never will.
I'm starting to see a bit of a change in the way Jonathan Pierce evaluates things. He less flips out over something that's great, and instead really compliments something that's decidedly average to raise the viewer's opinion. Like, for example, he said Eruption versus Big Nipper was a fantastic fight. And I thought, was it? I mean, maybe now that you've said that, it was a little better than I first thought. Thanks, Jonathan.
It was decent driving there, but it wasn't fantastically entertaining.
It's certainly something that he does more and more in the reboot, but even earlier for Series 6 Heat A, that was on Challenge, a little bit of a shout out there to our boys at Challenge. The Razor v Cyrax battle, where Razor dominates for 2 minutes, then Cyrax gets a flipping, and JP's like, is this gonna be the biggest shocking Robot Wars history? It's like, mate, it's gonna self-right, give it a rest.
The main thing I remember about watching that fight for the first time was just Razor and Growler holding one end of Cyrax each and just shunting back and forth with it.
And then JP losing his shit at Mr. Psycho smashing a light bulb.
Oh god. Yeah. It's not...
This is the power of the new house robot! If you've got any sirens on top of your robot, well, that's going to cost you Mortis versus Panic Attack, and now it's going to cost you...
Like, I'm not being funny, lads, but when Cassius Chrome is more effective in its first battle than Mr. Psycho and Growler, that says quite a lot. I mean, come on, it put Mechaniac on fire.
Look, Cassius Chrome had the best house robot debut. Nobody did as well in their first appearance.
Why is that legitimate? Like, genuinely...
Oh god.
It's like, for those who can't quite remember, Cassius Chrome's first fight was in Supernova versus Mechaniac, and after Mechaniac had been killed by Supernova and the back plate had been ripped off by Supernova, Cassius Chrome just comes in and punches the entire battery packs out of Mechaniac, leaving it hanging out the back of the machine, then punches straight through it and sets one on fire, and then rams it across the arena. And it's like, it was legit the best first impression any House Robot's ever had. And then it somehow managed to lose it. But King B came second in the joust, which was enough to qualify for the arena semi-final.
It managed a distance of 6.95 meters.
So bang on halfway, basically.
But, well, no, because half of the robots that did the joust in that heat finished in the minus figures.
Yeah.
So it didn't even have to move.
Yeah, to be fair. But it get obviously, as Nick said, it gets into the arena where it meets Robo-Doc for the beginning of a long and bitter rivalry. Probably this is the rivalry of Robot Wars, I think, because none of the others had quite as many encounters as this one, except maybe Firestorm and Razor, but that really wasn't much of a rivalry, all told.
Well, pre-reboot, because now you absolutely can't keep Carbide Apollo or Carbide Eruption apart, those sort of matchups. There's been 5 fights between Carbide and Apollo and 5 fights between Ironside 3 and Pulsar, but they are less so of rivalries and more just recurring encounters.
But for a rivalry, this has the most limp of starts to one. Like,
Well, that's
just
because it's
King
Series
B
2, mate.
dominating. Yeah, I know, but Robo-Doc doesn't even put up a fight here. Come on.
That's true.
No, I disagree.
Really?
Like, it's... Phil Brett from Team B claims that the judges took over 10 minutes to make the decision.
Yeah, but that's because it was Series 2. They would have taken 10 minutes deciding if Napalm beat Pandemonium when Pandemonium got flipped.
Let's put this in perspective. It took the judges narrowly over 10 minutes to decide Androne 4000 versus Tauron, because I was there and timing it. And so King Buxton and Robo-Doc were on that level.
I'm not sure I quite agree there. I mean, as far as the fight goes, King B actually is now showing actually a lot better control. Between the joust and now they've learned to control that robot, because in the joust they nearly drove it themselves straight over the wall. But they managed to push Robo-Doc from the side into the PPZ, which surprisingly wasn't just instant death for Robo-Doc, as so many fights were. It pushes it from the front, but then almost manages to reverse Robo-Doc into the pit. And then Matilda ends up overturning Robo-Doc, which probably was a deciding factor.
It is also worth expanding on Phil Brett's earlier comment. He did specifically say on the King Buxton website, I have to say that it was made to look like we won with ease, but this wasn't the case.
Well, yeah.
That's specifically what he said about the fight.
In that case,
So
fine, because in the edited fight, Robo-Doc literally does nothing. Like, I'm watching it at this moment, it does nothing. So the editor,
The editing of Robot Wars fights is one of the things that I find most questionable about it, because just the way they can edit fights can completely change how one of them looks to the audience. Like, the long-sighted one is Stinger and Chaos 2, where so many people say that Stinger should have won that fight, and looking at the TV edit, yes, it should. But if you apparently watching it live, Chaos 2 actually managed to immobilize Splinter.
Splinter? God, I love that zombie win against Hypnodisc.
Splinter's ragged corpse rose out of the pit and just shoved Chaos 2 around for a while, and one of the jagged bits of ripped up metal tore a hole in the back plate of Chaos 2. That's definitely what happened in that fight.
where did you get that information from? Because I've never heard this.
It was one of the things that I think it was a correction that was given to the Fight Court episode that Mr. Psycho did on that fight. He talked about it in the monthly review of his content.
But was it the guy who said that the unedited battle was included on Chaos 2's DVD? Because that was wrong. It was the... Yeah, because Chaos 2's actual fight there, it was either the Flipper Frenzy or... I think that one was for
Yeah, it was the Pussycat fight.
It was Pussycat, that's it. It was the grand final.
Well, that's whatever then.
But yeah, we get your general point.
Yeah, the point is that they can completely control how the audience sees the fight, which I don't necessarily agree with. I mean, I get that they have to shorten it down for TV, but
Like when they edited Mute versus Judge Shred 3 to make it seem like less of a win for the robot that actually won it.
yeah.
Because they wanted to get all of those self-writing flips in.
Because, they just don't like Mute's rear flipper. Its true function is to edit parts out of the fight. But anywho, so King Buxton actually coming in high offer we're going to call it a close win over Robo-Doc.
Yes.
We'll trust the team
Yes,
on
we
that.
will.
And then they go into a unexpectedly more dominant fight than before against what I would have said was the Heat favourite based on its performance up to this point.
All Talk is one of those robots that just makes me so sad every time I think about it, because it's just All Talk was so good, and then gradually every successive incarnation of it just gets worse and worse and worse until you get to Series 5 and they're driving a plastic sand pit around the arena. And
yeah, I really wish All Talk was in a different heat because it could have won a solid half of them.
Yeah, it was a really solid machine for Series 2 standards.
And to give King Buxton credit, it deserved the top 8 finish it got. It was genuinely, by the end of this episode, I was convinced it was one of the best robots in Series 2.
It's a very solid machine for Series 2 standards. It managed to push All Talk all the way back to the edge of the pit, and then just Killer Lot just pokes it in with the lance, and it was clearly overpowering All Talk, and All Talk had a wedge, if I recall correctly. So
it had like forks.
Yeah, but it was lower, so it was the lower machine, but it was just outpushed by King B, and it's a very impressive machine by this point. By Series 2 standards, King B is very good. It's just, I think, part of the issue with why it had such diminishing returns later on is that they never really updated it too far past that. And obviously the constant engine fires is another issue that they had, but we'll get to that.
Like, Simon Harrison did specifically say about King Buxton in Series 2 that it was built to win. Like, he doesn't hide the fact, although he's lost his competitive edge later on somehow, perhaps you could say, back in Series 2 this was built to win, and it could have, to be honest. Roadblock was one of the hardest things it could have had to deal with. I think if Kilotron had that random breakdown, it could have won that. And Panic Attack, it could maybe be lower. It's an if. An improbable, but an if. And then Cassius, we don't rate that too much, do we, lads?
Cassius is hard to judge because on paper it should absolutely demolish King Buxton, but in terms of how well driven it was, is a completely different story.
Yeah, it wouldn't finish off King Buxton quickly, so it would be in danger just because of that.
Yeah, the longer a fight with Cassius goes on, the more chance it has of killing itself.
Yeah, whether that be through the flipper breaking, a drive chain going, Rex shooting into the pit, you count it.
Yeah, I mean,
he getting distracted and going for the house robots.
In terms of in Series 2, he drove it into the pit. In Series 3, Mick drove it into the pit. In the grudge match special against Mortis, it drove into the pit. Let's be fair, the International League was originally set up just so they could hand Cassius 2 a trophy, and somehow it still would have driven into the pit against Dietor.
The pit was open in that, so they could have. And so 2 years later, they had to give Dietor an undeserved tag team Terror victory instead, so that they could have a trophy to make up for that one that they could have had.
What was David Gribble doing in tag team? I don't think he really cared too much.
His efforts amounted to 0. Dietor won that thing single-handedly, and even then it shouldn't have. But maybe that's a little bit off topic, considering King Buxton has now qualified for the Gauntlet of the semi-finals.
Compared to its previous Gauntlet performance, where it just sort of drove very poorly and ended up stuck to a fence, in this one they drive very well. Shunt pushes the ball straight onto the robot, and then immediately falls off the wagon and into the pit because Shunt is always fucking drunk in Series 2. King B then shoves the ball into Matilda and then drives past her and Dead Metal straight into the end zone, and it's over very quickly. It's a very good performance, and definitely one of King B's strengths was how good at driving it the team were.
And then they qualified for the pinball.
Come the semi-finals, the trial was standardised, and it just became both sides had pinball. And it's not a fantastic pinball showing. I mean, pinball's hard to judge at the best of times, just because.
Yeah, to lose at that stage, you have to be the very worst robot at it. 4 go through and 1 goes out. In this occasion, it was GBH.
Oh, poor GBH.
GBH was deserved better than it got.
Yeah, come to think of it, actually, GBH got 5th in this trial, but they did so with 145 points. So that was more than both Napalm and Mortis from the semi-final before it. If they just swapped the draws a little bit, they would have been fine. And I've even looked it up, and they also got more points than Behemoth did. And they got more points than
Oh my
They
God.
got more points than everyone from the other trial except for Panic Attack. What the?
Oh, man.
Poor GBH! Killatron came second with 135 in the other semi.
I have never realised just how bad that is. Oh, no. I felt bad for GBH anyway, because it's a really solid Series 2 robot, but now I'm just crying.
Oh god, that is terrible.
Yeah, and it's like that one random heat in the Second Wars where Rox has to go out in the Gauntlet for getting 7.9 meters. And I'm like, that could have won, or at least come second in another heat, but it came 6th with 7.9. And now,
Man.
God, GBH always deserved better, but yeah, it could have done much better as Facet, and I can't remember what draw it got in Series 6, but
It was in that melee with the Chromalot, the Alien, and ICU.
in one of the best fights ever. It's like an actual quote from Toon Ganondorf that I read today. We're bringing him back for you, podcast fans. We know you'll love him. He actually said, GBH2 probably deserved to be a Heat finalist, but I wouldn't give it that opportunity if it meant taking away its Series 6 melee, because it was just too fun. And he's kind of right. It was great.
it was. But it gets through the pinball. A killer lot held down the ramp again, but not quite as much as it normally does. It just tips off the end. It just takes out some barrels and bricks, and then it gets high-centered briefly on top of the bricks, and then just makes a mad dash for the 50-point target, and gets blocked by Matilda at the last second. It comes away with 165 points. I'm not sure is that good for pinball. Pinball always confused me. It's just like
It is compared to the other semi-final.
but its prize for getting through the pinball convincingly is a fight with Roadblock, and that is absolutely probably the worst draw that King B could have gotten.
Yeah, because Roadblock is on an absolute high. Like, I didn't realize until I rewatched Series 2 just how well Roadblock did. They had like the toughest draw that a champion's faced since Carbide in Series 9 and 10. They came here beating Kilohertz, and then Onslaught, which qualified over Nemesis, and then they get King Buxton, and then they're going into Cassius, who they were beating as well before they just slipped a little corner onto the PPZ.
The house robots did what the house robots always do. I mean, as far as fighting Roadblock goes, I mean, they could not attack the front because they would just drive straight up it, because Roadblock's wedge was incredibly good for that point. It probably wasn't a bad wedge even by later standards, to be fair. King B managed to get around the back of it and push it into the PPZ, and at this time Roadblock escaped. And then it pushes King B with backwards and has the saw blade going, but it doesn't do shit because it's a saw blade. And then King B begins what would be a long tradition for the robot in that it catches fire. Its engines start burning and fire and smoke start belching through a small hole in the top of the robot, and that's kind of the end of it.
It's sad that this is obviously what we'll remember the fight for, but this is the first time ever Roadblock's been put on the back foot. Pretty much. And King B does a very, very good job. It just doesn't have the durability, sadly. I mean, Simon Harrison said that the machine was strained anyway, so it was even worse that it had to fight Roadblock at this stage, but no, it does a good job. It does as well as it can, really.
And you'd think Roadblock at least would have been troubled against Kilohertz, but it just owned that one. So well done to King Buxton. In another world, they could have been...
They would have held their own in that grand final, for sure.
Yeah. King B could have done a lot better, but alas, it had to make do with what would essentially be the equivalent of second round semi-finalist, which is no small feat.
You know, if you want to make it sound as good as you can, you call it fifth place.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Because what were the other robots that went out of this stage? Probably ones that weren't as good as King B.
Hardvark.
Yeah, Hardvark, definitely not as good. And then Behemoth is, at the time, kind of even, and then Mortis is a step above.
And Mortis didn't even want to be there.
But Behemoth is a grand finalist now, so King Buxton is still, the second most deserving.
Arguably.
It's not going to beat Mortis after that heat final against Recyclops. Mortis should be a grand finalist, but it's just not.
That was probably one of the injustices. So it came back for Series 3, same name, but it's statistically it's different. It's now 77.9 kilograms, so it's actually slightly, I believe it's slightly lighter by a gram. It's a gram lighter.
That fire.
Yeah.
Oh my. But when you consider that the Series 4 entry is called King B3, this is clearly full on King Buxton 2. They just didn't officially
Robot Wars had a long history, especially in Series 3, of just not paying attention to numbers being added to returning machines. Because Panic Attack always had a number, and it was just always ignored. So... But it comes back with I suppose with Panic Attack that they were trying to keep the name the same because it was the returning champion. But it comes back with it's now 25 by 1.3 by 0.76. Its clearance is 0.05 meters, so it's the same, but they've wrote it differently for reasons. It's now powered by 5 electric motors, which are equally flammable. Its weapons are now listed as lifting and ramming spikes, and apparently it costs £1,500, which is slightly more reasonable than last episode's napalm apparently costing £5,000, which I still think is bullshit.
That's so quality. And 4,999 are just David Crosby man hours.
Yes.
As hired by the Dartford Girl Grammar School.
Most likely. And its first fight is against the Robot Wars community's favourite slightly forced, slightly dead meme, Eric. I mean, it's a decent battle on Eric's part. I mean, it flicks King B a little bit. And it does decently in terms of a pushing battle with King B.
Yeah, like, again, this gives credit to both machines, really, because when you consider that Eric was Heat final quality in Series 4, despite being unchanged, that not only shows how well King Buxton did to win against it, but also how unlucky Eric was to be in this position. Both could have done better elsewhere.
Eric could easily have been Heat final.
Mind you, I am saying King Buxton does well, but why don't you tell us how this ends?
It shoves Eric forward and beaches itself on the pit. It manages to escape the pit as Eric tries to push it back, and in doing so just tips itself in. King B almost kills itself in round 1.
Yeah.
Not the best.
Now, since Eric obviously did so well in Series 4, how well would Eric do if King B went into the pit here? Would we back it to win this heat?
See, that's another interesting question, because King Buxton's second
It would
opponent...
definitely beat Weldor,
Are
I
you
think.
Sure? That's said with pretty high certainty. Weldor's a good robot for its time.
But it's got a year of ground clearance in this incarnation. And it would probably be flipped quite easily by Eric. Don't really rate its ability to self-ride that well. I'm not sure how well it would do against 101.
101 basically fought Eric in round 1 when it fought Overkill.
Yeah, but Overkill also kind of, wasn't a very good robot.
Most things in this heat were good. This is the most solid heat. This is the most solid heat you can have.
This was a great heat.
It's a really good one.
King Buxton is always in a really packed heat now that I think about it.
We'll get to Series 4 Heat A in just a moment.
Yeah.
If Eric unceremoniously pits itself, and King Buxton advances to the fight with as we mentioned, Weldor, which King B kind of runs away with this fight.
King B itself is just a solidly made machine. There's nothing Weldor can really grind down on it, unless those motors burn out. And
I mean, as far as robots go, I mean, King B almost kills itself in round 1, and then this is really the redemption for it, as it just fucking...
Yeah, it's what happens when you have a decent machine with drive power. You don't even need that great of a weapon in Series 3. As long as you can jam wheels up, move armor inwards, you're good to go.
I mean, to be fair, looking at Series 6 and 7, Tornado and Storm 2 kind of proved that even by that point you didn't really need a weapon.
And motors that didn't burn out, but yes.
You know something else that's interesting about how stacked this heat was in Series 3? All 4 of the robots to win a fight within Heat J of Series 3 would be seeded in the next series. 101, wow. King Buxton, Weldor, and Centurion.
Trivia.
And then we've got Eric losing in round 1 as well.
That is quite impressive. I mean, to be fair, Series 4 had some throwaway seeds just because they had to get 2 per episode.
Yeah, like Centurion was probably the most debatable one of them all, apart from Stinger, but it still was. Yeah,
I mean, King B actually immobilizes Weldor during this fight. It bashes and batters it, and they get stuck together at one point until Shunt separates them. But Weldor is dead at that point, and King B becomes one of the smaller group of robots that actually attack the house robots. It starts ramming into Killalot's tracks and does fuck all to it, and then is pushed away by Shunt. And as Weldor is carried over to the pit, you can just see King B drive straight into Shunt and just sort of ramp off of one of its wedges. And just in the background, as Weldor is unceremoniously dunked into the pit. This gets it a rematch with the Robo-Doc team with their new machine 101, and they are very evenly matched. King B.
Yeah, like this is in NJG Woo's top 200 Robot Wars fights at least. One of the best heat finals in Series 3. We're gonna have to get you to upgrade the list, man. It can't be a top 100 anymore. It's too tight.
This list is just going to get longer and longer and longer until it's just every battle in Robot Wars ever ranked in order as of Series 10.
I should do that. Every fight ever list.
Yeah, ending with Evil Weevil versus Panzer.
Or Eruption versus Carbide, one of those fights, but we won't go there.
Oh, God.
Which one? You've got at least 3.
But, King B has the advantage in pushing power and speed. But 101's design at this point is inherently flawed because it doesn't have the sort of wedgelets on the front of its tracks at this point. So when it tries to push things, it will often just drive up on top of them. But King B does also show some poor control and manages to get itself stuck on the wall next to Shun. And at one point it stops completely dead for no apparent reason and then comes back to life.
That is the moment where the joystick snapped on Simon Harrison's controller.
Well, it starts moving again after that.
Yeah, because he's trying to wiggle it back in.
That's the real intensity of the fight here, lads. It was so close. He just broke his controller.
And, yeah, this is the start of the 101 curse. It breaks a joystick. It does more damage in the control booth than its Spike ever did. Oh.
The Spike was terrible. The Spike just sort of pushed King B away from it in this fight. And Simon Harrison is doing a surprisingly decent job of fighting on with a broken control stick, but ultimately King B starts to smoke again and burns up again.
Yeah, though let's be fair, 101 itself was very, very slow at the end as well.
Oh yeah, they ground 101 down fairly well. But King B, once again, catching fire, doing what King B is wont to do.
Like, maybe when he broke his controller, it actually has voice commands, and he just yells, "Frick!" And that's the secret trigger to just set King Buxton on fire. Every time. Whenever he lets out a mild swear, he's just, bushes! And then King B just starts to smoke.
Oh, God.
Bushes?
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's if somebody else is controlling the weapons normally in Robo Wars, they're just whenever he gets close into the opponent with the lifting spike and just shouts fire to the guy next to him to tell him and the robot just immediately boom. But it's reward for.
And then later on in Extreme, he's got a spinning disc on the back, which they do have for this series as well, to be fair, but the teammate just goes, spin! And so the robot does exactly that.
But its reward for reaching the Heat final of Series 3 is to be seeded 17th for Series 4, which lands it in Heat A with Chaos 2.
An unblessing in disguise.
I kind of think King B was snubbed a little bit here. I think it should have been given the 16th seed at least. Swap it with Kilohertz.
Yeah, because Kilohertz has already had a great fight with Chaos 2 before. It could have had somehow it's still in NJG Woo's top 100 spoilers. Don't worry, it's not going to be in there by the end of Series 10.
Series 10 has had some fucking amazing fights so far.
Seeing as a Chaos 2 fight that he decides to exclude is its fight with Dan Tomkia. Shaking my head!
We're not going there again.
I like Dan Tomkia, which is apparently weird in the Robot Wars community. So
it's shit.
I agree with you. I like it.
Moving on.
Yes, okay, statistically, it now weighs 77.3 kilograms, so it's getting lighter and lighter by small amounts every year.
It's just cutting one Greg's out of the diet.
It's 0.25 by 1 by 0.80 meters now. It has a clearance of 0.05 meters. Again, they're not changing it much. It's got its power is electric powered motors because the stat boards get less and less detailed as the show winds on, to the point that now on Series 10 you've just got bars with no numbers or anything. And then weapons, it's got lifting, flipping spikes. It doesn't mention the saw blade. And to be fair, I would have mentioned the saw blade. And and it's under the notes is listed as 99.9% Simon's own money. Simon Harrison is back. His teammates are now Tony Sharp and Grant Hornsby. They mentioned that he's got a new team in the pits.
But when we actually get into the fight, this is an interesting one because this is one of the only fights in Robot Wars, in my opinion, to have been judged incorrectly.
Really now?
Like, there's so few times where I actively disagree with the judges, because even when the TV edit makes it look like the judges are wrong, you can still kind of say, but maybe there was something off-screen which swung it in their favour, like Mute's rear flipper, as we mentioned earlier. But this was a fight between Attila the Drum and Medusa 2000, and King B dominates it.
Yes.
They are deservedly the winner. They do, between the three robots, King B does 90% of the work, Attila the Drum does 10% of the work, in that it moves a bit when it's attacked and makes some contact with its weapon. And Medusa 2000, he's just celebrating the new millennium by moving a bit.
It's not a very entertaining fight. I mean, the one point where King B is in anything close to peril, it gets wedged on top of Medusa, but Medusa is otherwise trundling around and doing naff all.
Like, you think Hammerhead 2 didn't deserve to have a British win against its name in the Seventh Wars. Even that at least put its front panel against Iron Ore 2.1 at some point. Medusa 2000 is a speed bump in the middle of the arena. Like, yeah, Attila the Drum, it gets attacked throughout, but so does Big Nipper in Series 7 first round melee, and that still got through. This was, in my opinion, wrong, but not for King B.
No, King B is absolutely the winner of this fight. Honestly, if you could eliminate two from this fight, you could, because Medusa 2000 does fuck all, and Attila the Drum just spends the fight getting bullied by King B.
I mean, we would have at least had an interesting fight in Chaos 2's second round if Attila got through. It would have had to work a little bit more, because again, Medusa literally does nothing in round 2. Why would you expect it to? But, I mean, people shit on Foxic for getting through its melee. But this is on a judge's decision!
Because at least Foxic went through over two robots that actually died. Here, Attila the Drum lost, despite putting the first effort into winning a battle. And then Medusa didn't even go out of the arena against Chaos 2. They really wasted our time with that one.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things in the pit interview before this fight that I found amusing was that they now have ducted cooling on the motors to try and reduce the burning up problem, but it's also, petrol. So, on one hand, it's going to, be slightly less incendiary, and on the other hand, well, it's got petrol in it, so if it does go up, it'll go up really nicely.
You know what I'd call that? Fearless innovation.
Hey.
No! Oh, God.
But here in the second round, we finally get to talk about one of this podcast's favourite robots. Magnifique, delicacy, mwah. Your best French restaurant, it is Atomic. Just saying Atomic makes me want to smile. What a great robot.
Atomic was that robot that got snubbed until Series 7 happened, and then it was suddenly amazing.
But you wouldn't know that because you haven't watched Series 7.
I at least know its fucking reputation.
You don't mention it on the podcast. We take the mickey out of him away from the camera where he thoroughly deserves it. But here, people are actually going to stop listening because they realise the guy who's reading off the stats to us is actually an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. He just reads the stats. He reads the stats, nothing more.
Yeah, that's my job. I've secured my place forever on this podcast just by being the only person dumb enough to read the fucking stats out. Oh god, it's Fight with Atomic, such a good machine, and it's a really good machine. So we'll put it up against Chaos 2, and then we'll put it up against Hypnodisc.
And then we'll just not even accept it for Series 6.
Nah, fucking hell. Considering some of the shit that got into Series 6, that's not really justifiable. But,
And then Extreme was just the tease. Actually, we're going to give you a complete walkover of a Mayhem. Then you're going to fight Hypnodisc and miss out on the Annihilator. Sucks to be you.
Oh god, we already talked about how amazing that Annihilator lineup could have been if not for the fact they just shoved in two of the competitors against Hypnodisc. And they just end up with like two of the originally planned quote-unquote competitors in it.
But even though we say Atomic gets snubbed, it hasn't happened at this point yet. It does actually pull off the upset against King B3.
I mean, as far as this fight goes, Atomic is clearly on the back foot at the start. It's King B's getting a good couple of rounds in, and Atomic only manages one flip, which, well, King B's invertible, so it does fuck all.
And then Atomic goes for a second flip, and the only thing that flies as a result is its own weapon.
Yeah,
as it separates from the body of the machine, leaving Atomic as a wedge. This was definitely King B's. But then what happened?
Would it be? I'm going out on a limb here. Would it be that King B's insides catch fire?
Potentially.
They drove rather close to the flame jets on the sidewall. Maybe we can blame external sources of fire this time.
Do not forget that arena wall spike. Oh, devilish.
What you mean? The ones that look like they're made out of fucking foam?
Yeah.
That legit killed Gemini.
No, this one isn't a static spike. This is a little prodder at the side. This is even worse.
Oh god, let's be honest. The spikes on the arena on the Robot Wars board game looked more threatening than any of the spikes on the actual Series 4 arena.
I need to get mine back out after that. I've actually got 2 copies of the board game. What happened was that I originally got it for like £2 in a charity shop, and then my mini-bots used to sit on the windowsill, and so I eventually thought, well, these board game counters are pretty much mini-bots, let's put them there too. And when I moved house, I lost my Razor counter for the board game, and so, having decided that I couldn't find it, I decided to look on eBay. How much would it cost just to get another Razor counter? And it was going to be like a lot. Just to, the one time it was actually listed, it was going to be a lot to get all of the counters all over again without the board game. And then just a year later, I just walk into a charity shop and there's the whole board game all over again for 99p. So I just bought a second copy of the board game, and now I've got 2 of them taking up space under the stairs.
That's the board game was one of the. I loved it. Everybody in my family hated it because it was so slow.
I couldn't figure out the rules, to be honest.
I mean, the selection of counters was just the weirdest thing. You had Razor in its Series 2 design, which, you know, Razor makes sense. You had Panic Attack in what was, I suppose, looked kind of like its Series 2.
Yeah, ish.
Yeah.
I think it was mostly like Series 3, just without the stream mech, because it had that ridge at the back of it.
Yeah, honestly, in a weird way, it looks almost a bit like the Series 6 version.
Don't say that.
You had incredibly off-model Chaos 2.
Yes, rapid.
Like that, it was rapid, wasn't it? It wasn't Chaos 2, it was rapid.
It was rapid. It was very prophetic. We had rapid that early. Then you had incredibly off-model suicidal tendencies.
Yeah, like calling that suicidal tendencies is a guess.
Yeah,
I would have said Mortis, to be honest.
It's a bit Mortis as well. And then you've got Bolt from the Blue, which was their consolation prize for losing to Firestorm.
And then they've just got this perfect replication with no flaws whatsoever of Destructible.
Of all the ones to get right, it's Bolt from the Blue and Destructible that get the treatment. Such a weird fucking... I just use the fucking mini-bots, to be honest.
And that is what we call a tangent.
Oh, yeah.
What do Robot Wars the game and printers have in common? Printer cartridges especially. Yeah, it's easier to buy a whole new copy than it is to replace individual parts. So... But at least, despite the 17th seed going down before even fighting Chaos 2, it does actually get a second chance at glory within the Fourth Wars.
Ah, yes. The Tag Team Terror, which is... let's be honest, Series 4 Tag Team was basically a complete shit show, and it's amazing for that, just because nobody fucking cared about the rules, they just did whatever the fuck they wanted, and that made it so much more entertaining than the extreme version where they actually tried.
Oh, God. But the extreme version was just terrible in general. Every fight had two breakdowns, essentially, bar the final.
Pretty much.
At least this one was, like, fun in a mental way.
Yeah, I like the fact... I actually liked the amount of rule breaking in this one just because it made it more entertaining.
Oh, yeah. Let's not forget JP's contributions as well. Completely losing his shit at anything.
That just sounds like JP's commentary in general.
True, but even more so here. But I think they gave him a little bit of a colour issue, shall we say, by painting blue and red on the arena floor. I don't think that went well with him. I think it maybe triggered something in his mind to ramp it up even more than usual. I mean, this man loses his shit at King B, like, slightly touching Invertebrat with its spinner. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But, it teams up with 101, which is probably the team with the most reasoning for it, that they ever had.
Exterminator and Invertebrat. We met them on the M1.
That would actually still be a better reason than the actual one they gave, which was that just one of the teams visited the other one's hometown once, and that's it. But,
imagine this, Firestorm and Scorpion. We wanted to damage our reputation a bit. We just wanted to come across as more of a joke.
we wanted to team up with something shit.
We take our matches incredibly seriously, so we thought, let's listen to the feedback and just team up with some shite.
Yeah. And, I mean, Scorpion, at this point, Scorpion was still labouring under the impression that their machine wasn't shite, which is...
Are we really going to let that Graham Bone impression go without punishment, by the way? That was dreadful.
I'm from County Durham. We're Team Firestorm, and you're gonna burn.
The punishment is just going to be leaving him to the YouTube commenters. That's incredibly cruel, I know, but still. So, King V and 101 are drawn against Exterminator 2 and Invertebrat. And King V almost immediately rams Invertebrat so well that it just sort of trundles away into a corner and dies, which is honestly a very accurate summary of most of Invertebrate's performances. It was a truly shite robot.
Well, that rules out the Invertebrate podcast.
It did quite well in Series 3, reaching the Heat final, and then they changed the spelling from Invert Abrat to Invert Urbrat, and it all goes downhill from there, with 3 straight losses in Series 4, even though it was basically a shadow seed. They just break down in their group battle. Then they break down in the tag team round 1, and then the third place playoff in the tag team terror. That I struggle to believe they were even present. To be honest, that was just Exterminator all the way through.
That one was just Exterminator versus Bigger Brother, because the second robots on each side just didn't do anything. But.
And it was actually a really good 1v1 between the two of them as well, aside from the ending. But that attributed another loss to Invertebrate.
Yeah. But then the rest of the round 1 fight is just spent with King B and 101 just sort of shoving Exterminator around, while Exterminator's axe it just is the way of every fight it used the axe in Series 4. It does fuck all.
Let's not forget, this is a different axe as well. This is the Series 3 point. And it's still useless.
Yeah, they used the Series 3 axe in this one. Was Tag Team filmed before the rest of Series 4?
I doubt it, because the other Christmas specials generally weren't. War of Independence was partially filmed first, but that's because it had Americans in it. I think the rest was saved till afterwards. You especially notice that 101 had different side panels, so that would kind of suggest later.
I think Exterminator had the 2 poles on the back of it as opposed to the ring shape though. So
yeah, and that was an innovation for its semi-final against Wild Thing.
Yeah, so I'm guessing it was during, like post Heat, but pre-semi-final. But yeah, I mean it's a very convincing win for King B and 101, and that puts them into the final where they're up against Firestorm 2 and Scorpion, or really Firestorm 2. But yet Scorpion sort of actually manages to last longer. Firestorm just sort of stops working, which is a surprise because Firestorm is normally such a good machine, and it just.
Yeah, as I said, we came here to damage our reputation. Because Firestorm never breaks down anywhere else.
No, it doesn't.
It's like, the Series 4 specials generally damaged everyone's reputations. Like, Wild Thing is the robot with the most fights to have never broken down, but it came bloody close in the Celebrity special. Like, they were immobile for about 20 seconds.
The only robot that came out of okay, 2 robots came out of the specials looking not worse than they went in, and that was Pussycat and Mortis. Because Pussycat won, even though it was being driven by a complete newbie.
Razor.
Do you count the Annihilator as a special? I suppose, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But
of course you do.
Yeah, I was thinking along the lines of like the tag team and the War of Independence and the other one. But yeah, okay, yeah, Razor definitely counts, and Spikosaurus then.
Like not even Dominator 2. Even that broke down despite Dominate.
It had that wrapped up, and then it just dies to Spikosaurus.
And also, it was technically, this was the only occasion in which Kilohertz won a fight.
Staggering.
So I guess they increased their rep as well. Even Chaos 2 entered a Series 4 Christmas special and lost the first fight. And Stinger straight afterwards as well, having done nothing in the win that it achieved.
Yeah, I mean, Chaos. I mean, with Chaos 2, it's slightly more understandable because it was the big robot in that episode. So naturally, they were just going to gang up on it.
Of course, and I'm glad they did. It made for a better episode.
I mean, and it's surprising that they didn't all gang up on Razor and the other one.
They tried.
Oh, they did.
But sadly, Vercingetorix does what it always does.
Oh, yeah.
And then Spawn of Scudder does what it always does. Except, I mean, that was the only time. But Spawn of Scudder does what Spawn again always does. And then Behemoth doesn't even come back, and then you can't outnumber Razor. So that was the end of the story.
Until the Drum, which, let's be fair, wasn't a great robot, and Onslaught, whose primary contribution was lasting long enough to reach the final, and then give Razor an easy robot to sort of side strand so we could go and kill Matilda.
King B3 gets into the tag team final against Scorpion and Firestorm 2. Oh, we did say that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
So, yeah, the other robots break down, and then
King B and 101 just spend the rest of the fight attacking each other.
Except this is something I kind of misremembered. Like, we all remember it as 101 and King B attacking each other, because that's what Jonathan Pierce says. And indeed, they do bump into each other a bit. But actually, the majority of the post-fight there was the house robots attacking King B and 101. I don't know why. I guess they were trying to calm the heat between the rivals. But actually, I would have loved to see King B and 101 have a proper 1v1 there and then. But instead, they just get killed by Shunt, and it's kind of sad. But nonetheless, King B3 and 101 win the Tag Team Terror, and in Simon Harrison's own words, he grabs the only trophy and runs off with it.
What a guy. Only Simon Harrison could do that.
101, they get enough medals from Techno Games where they win everything. This is Simon Harrison's trophy, and he is the individual.
Aside from Series 1 of Techno Games where Scuttle's legs just flew off for no apparent reason.
Oh, Simon Harrison, though, what a man. Only he could pull this off and not come across as an arsehole. It's just hilarious.
Couldn't you imagine if Ian Lewis had done this?
Oh, God! Ed Hoppet, off!
Or can you just imagine, like, the Fluffy team saying, look, I know you came all the way from Germany, but I think we deserve the physical reward for being the most promising newcomer in Series 5, and we're gonna take that, thanks.
Yeah. But we'll be...
I wonder who kept the trophy out of Dietor and Pussycat, because it better be Dietor. I think they got one each. Oh, and King B was in the Pinball Warrior, and they actually did rather well, finishing 4th place with 225
Yeah,
points.
but Gemini was in it, so we have to forget everyone else.
Yeah, Series 4 Pinball was just a total shit show. Like, you've defeated the entire concept of Pinball Warrior when you give a cluster bot a go, and then it still comes within, like, 10 points of not winning.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Moving on from that shambles.
Well, I believe we will be covering Extreme later, because we are now currently sitting at, we're now over an hour on Series 2 to 4 content, so I think we should probably sign off here.
That's what you do. What you get when you bring Tale of the Toaster on.
Yeah. Well, hey, I still think we didn't do too badly.
No, not without Toon Ganondorf to carry the ship, of course. We did okay.
And Luke to actually be a good host.
I mean, I wouldn't say we kept above water, but we haven't drowned just yet.
No, I mean, I'm feeling pretty waterlogged.
I think that talking about the Robot Wars board game was my highlight, lads.
Potentially, yes.
So next time on the Robot Wars History podcast, can the reigning tag team champions King B Powerworks and 101 defend their tag team title?
No.
We haven't given away the answer yet.
Yes, we have. They can't.
Might as well do a Series 10 next time preview with clips to spoil it for them anyway.
From Krukan, nuts too. Why are they talking about nuts too?
Right, okay.
I'm pretty sure that
From Robot Wars, the board game, Rapid, Flipper. Why are they talking about Rapid? Oh.
pretty sure they spoiled all the top 3 for next episode at the end of the last one.
Don't tell me, I haven't watched it.
I'm not gonna tell you, but I'm fairly sure they did.
I'm pretty sure Push to Exit won't be in there anyway, but we won't know that.
No.
Oh, great.
Tears gonna be salty.
And thus, this episode was released 2 weeks later than it was recorded, as to not imply the results of Series 10.
Pretty much. It takes that long for us to edit these things anyway.
Right, I'm getting this up tomorrow now, just to spite you.
Fuck it, whatever.
Send me your recording now.
Yeah.
Hey guys, did you know that I was in the audience for Series 10 and I actually know who the first 2 robots to fall in the first round are?
Silence!
Do you want to keep talking to me
No.
in this context?
No, let's not. But I think with that we'll bring this episode to a close. I've been technically partially a main host, Dan.
That's your name? I just thought you were Toa Arcan. Good to meet you, Dan. I've been Isaac.
Shut up, your name is always going to be Taylor the Toaster.
And my mic has actually worked today, so I can actually say I've been... Well, what do I go with? Do I go with NJG Woo or N Western
No, you
8?
don't, because we don't pronounce the letter woo the way you filthy humans do.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Are we gonna go with NJG Woo, Nick, or N Western 8?
Yes.
Okay.
We are.
That one's fine.
I'm the only reason this podcast gets viewers because I kind of rode off of the fact I upload decent quality episodes in the first place. So some of you have to listen to the podcast, but
Hey man, I upload high quality Robot Wars battles in static image format on the wiki.
Yeah, but that's Nick. He actually got to say things this time.
yeah, makes a change. I will be back in 7 episodes' time.
Yeah, probably.
He's not even doing the end of King Bee. We're going now, ta-ra!
Hopefully Nick will be back next time. Bye!